In collaboration with WTJX, the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands is pleased to present one-on-one interviews with candidates for the 7th legislative seat in the Virgin Islands from the St. Thomas-St. John district. All candidates were contacted and invited to participate. 4 either declined or did not respond to our invitation. I'm Gwen Marie Molinar of the League of Women Voters, and today we are pleased to have Barbara A. Petersen for an interview. Welcome, Ms. Petersen.
Welcome.
Would you begin
Thank
by
you.
telling us a little about yourself?
I'm Barbara Petersen. I'm a native Virgin Islander born and raised in St. Thomas. I am a product of the soil. My parents are, my mother is from the British Virgin Islands, my father is from St. Thomas, was from St. Thomas, the late Bert Petersen. My mother is Candia Petersen. I grew up in the Virgin Islands. I'm very proud to be a Virgin Islander. In terms of who I am and my background, I have worked in both private and public sector. Started out in the government with the Department of Tourism, moved on to when I came back home to the Virgin Islands because I worked for the Virgin Islands government stateside, and moved back home in 2002. I realized that it was time to move home, and I did, and went to work in the private sector for several years, and then joined several organizations. League of Women Voters, the Democratic Party Territorial Committee. I also joined Rotary. I joined a lot of organizations and started to get back into being involved with the community, because what I recognize is that you can't make a difference just by talking about it. You have to get involved. So I got involved in a lot of things, both socially. I'm a big carnival girl. I'm a proud, as I said, Virgin Islander, and I love culture. So I have always been active in carnival and my carnival troops, first with the Gypsies and now with Elsko Roebuck Troop. So that's who I am.
One thing you haven't mentioned so far, however, is your stint in the Young administration,
Yes.
where you served as the administrator for St. Thomas.
Correct.
Now, what value do you think this has given you in terms of running for office?
Right. So in 2006, when Governor DeYoung was elected, I was selected by him to be the St. Thomas Water Island administrator. That experience has a vast value in terms of the office that I'm running for as senator. What you do more than anything as administrator is you run government operations. You understand how government works, both the legislative, executive, and the judicial branch. You know how you respond to issues relative to constituent issues. You know who to go to make things happen. And that's what I did as administrator. And I did that for 8 years. And I think I've garnered a reputation in the community as somebody who got the job done and listened to the issues of our people.
So why do you think you want to be a senator?
Well, you know, one of the things that resonates for me about what I've seen in the legislature is the lack of civility, lack of respectability, lack of camaraderie. The days of old, and I'm not suggesting that we need to go back to some day of when people go backwards, but I do think that there are certain things as Virgin Islanders, we live in a very small community, and I think we need to do a better job at respecting one another. There's nothing that discourse is fine, disagreement is okay, but we can do it at a different level that we are doing it right now. And I think we've gotten to a point where we have to turn it around. The legislature is on a downward spiral, if I can say that, and I will say that. And I think I want to bring respectability back to the office.
Okay, what do you see as the 3 primary issues facing the territory at this time? Without discussing what they are, just identify what do you see as 3 primary areas of major concern?
Well, the economy, number 1, crime, number 2, and improving our infrastructure.
So what would you do as a senator to address the revenue issues for the Virgin Islands?
Well, we have to, the 3 things that I think that we can do to generate revenue that I would attempt to work with my colleagues to legislate is working with what we have. We have an excellent product. We have WICO, we have our Port Authority, Monsanto Terminal, we have Abramson and St. Croix. We have to look at the cruise ships that are coming into the territory and work with them. Ironically enough, we have senators that are sea trade right now, but the schedule for cruise ships coming to the Virgin Islands has been selected for next year already. But let's say in the next year or so, working with the cruise lines to determine that if we can get more ships here in the summertime, working with them to provide a product. So what I'm going to talk about is infrastructure and revenue at the same time. Creating a product that they would be proud to bring, not just in the wintertime when people want warmer temperatures and travel, but also in the summertime. It would be a win-win for the private sector because they wouldn't have to lay off people in the summertime and we would have more visitors to the island.
Well, okay, now the issues, how would you differentiate that responsibility from someone who is in tourism versus yourself as a senator? What would you do as a senator?
Well, you would work with the tourism department, and you're right. That role would be working, say, the commissioner of tourism, but you also have to provide incentives for these cruise ships to come, and that's where I'm going with it. Provide some kind of tax break, for example, that they would be incentivized to come here versus another destination. So you always have to make it interesting for a corporation to do business with you, and that's where the legislation and the legislature would come into play. Not particularly the senator having conversations with the cruise line. That's the job of the executive branch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So your one suggestion for revenue generation is enhancing or focus on tourism. Are there any other areas? For example, what did you think of the governor's measures for revenue generation?
I think they were flawed, and I think it was bad legislation. It was rushed, and if elected, I would do everything possible to repeal that law. It's not good legislation, and I think it needs to be revisited. I also want to emphasize that we have to slow down, do more research about legislation that comes down and before we make these laws permanent. You asked about another option in terms of raising revenues. We have a lot of outstanding debt. We have a lot of taxes that are outstanding. Two options. I could work with the Lieutenant Governor's Office and IRB to identify persons who owe taxes and try to collect them. But we can also look at possibly selling our debt. There are a lot of companies that would be happy to take on collections of debt and pay us pennies on the dollar. Frankly, if we're not collecting anything, something is better than nothing. So if we could say, for example, sell 40 cents on a dollar, 50 cents on a dollar, that would certainly bring a large amount of revenue into our coffers.
Now, becoming a senator, one of the things you're going to be doing is not just expressing concerns about our problems,
right,
but coming up with solutions to the problems. What's your general approach to problem solving?
Great question. I've emphasized this more than anything else is that I have the ability to listen and determine and figure out an issue. That's what's missing too. A lot of people don't hear very well. We have to, when people come before the legislature, which is part of the problem, people are extremely upset about coming before the legislature because there's not a lot of respect. You would have an ally in me that I would be willing to listen and keep an open mind and work with finding solutions to problems. So that's my approach.
Good. In terms of election reform, do you see any areas that you would be interested in moving forward on with respect to the Virgin Islands election reform?
Well, the election reform has always the big one is that we have a territory of 45,000, maybe 50,000 people in our district. For example, I won't do the entire territory, and yet there are so many people running for the same seats. So, we talked about number of seats and we talked about districting, and there's always pros and cons about it, but I honestly think we have to go back and revisit it because what we're doing now is it's not working. Too many people running against each other. We have too many people in the same parties running, and I think we could do a better job at how we do our elections. It's costing a lot of money to how we're running our elections as well, and I don't think it's required for such a small population.
What about the size of the legislature?
The size of the legislature has to be changed. And I'm not married to a result. I'm seeking that 7th seat, and I will be frank about that. But I would not be opposed to reducing the size of the legislature based on our population. I don't see the need for it to have 15 senators with the one at-large senator of 15 senators.
What about GERS? What role do you see the legislature playing in resolving this crisis?
The legislature's role has always been is to find revenues, right? And so we have to find revenues to infuse the GRS, the $4 billion unfunded liabilities. Not anything that we talk about it, but we have to find money to infuse it. I think one of the things that I've heard that had come up as legislation before is to offer the private sector an opportunity to pay into the pension fund. And when I've done some research and asked about it, the only response I've gotten is, well, it can't work. And I have always responded, well, why not? I think part of the EDA program, for example, we could amend that legislation to say, for example, that these companies must be a part of the GRS, and that would be an opportunity for more money to go into the system. There are a lot of options, but working with colleagues, I want to also say that not one senator can do anything. So you have to have camaraderie. You have to build relationships within that body, and I'm going to talk and speak to people who are willing to work with me to make these things happen. So that's one of the things I would look at.
Very good. One of the things I haven't heard anyone speak about, quite frankly, is a matter of climate change. Do you think this is a topic that in the Virgin Islands we should be concerned about?
Absolutely.
And why?
Well, just recently, I don't know when this is going to air, but I think about a week ago, the temperatures dropped down to the 60s here in St. Thomas and in the Virgin Islands, and it was incredible. And if we don't start talking about why this is happening, we're on the wrong path. I'm no expert, and I'm not familiar with the subject, so I won't expound on it, but I would absolutely welcome the people who, I know Dr. Watlington, for example, has been doing some research on that at UVI, and I would like to talk to him more about how we could help with doing more research and educating the community on global warming. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with a lot of issues like how we treat our environment. Waste disposal. There's a lot of stuff going on that people need to be aware of. So I definitely look at that.
Regarding a constitution, do you have any ideas?
You're really giving me the hot topics today.
Yeah.
So we're still, after all these years, we still have not gotten
Absolutely.
a constitution for the Virgin Islands, and we're still governed by the Organic Act. That's unacceptable. I'm not quite sure why we've gotten to this point that constitutions, learned people, educated people that are elected to serve us and put in that position to come up with it.
Certainly the topic is going to come up if you're elected to the Senate.
Right.
And so you're going to have to face that particular issue.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, Ms. Petersen, for sharing your thoughts with the voters. And I thank WTJX for this time. The League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands encourages all eligible voters to vote on April 8th. Those who come out to vote and can convince others to do the same help determine who our leaders will be. We have major issues in the Virgin Islands that require capable and informed leadership. Your vote can determine who will fill that vacant seat in our legislature. So, see you at the polls on April 8th.